Hey, everybody. Um, I just want to, first of all, just thank you so much for coming out. On behalf of Bethlehem and Corey's Love, we are really excited, and we really appreciate you just, showing up and raising awareness. But yeah, not only, we're really excited for this event, but man, we're so excited to use this as just a stepping stone and foundation to continue to grow, continue to reach out, continue to move, and continue to raise awareness of just overdose in Lancaster, especially. Um, but yeah, so again, just thank you so much for coming out, and I would like to pray for us. God, thank you so much for God that all that you've done for us. God, thank you so much for the strength and the just the ability and the programs to allow us to come and do something such as this. God, we're really grateful. God, we don't deserve it, but God, you've blessed Corey's love. In a powerful way. And God, we're just so appreciative of that. God, I pray for the speakers, just God, as they come up, and God, Morgan as she sings. God, I pray for strength. But God, I also pray, God, that they won't. That they will just allow you to speak through them. God, they will be up here and be an open and willing vessel, God, and just allow you to move and speak through them, God, like you can. God, I pray for Corey's Love as a foundation. God, that you would just continue to bless it. But God, I pray that we will be willing, God, and just allow you to move and grow us however you see fit. God, I'm so thankful for all that you're doing. God, it's your name that I pray. Amen.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you've been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. Is true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. Oh, I will rescue you.
Now, I would just like to take the time to introduce Jessica Beard. She is the founder of Corey's Love, but not only that, but she's also my aunt. So this is something that's very near and dear to me. And I would just like to take the time. I mean, I am personally so proud of Aunt Jessica for, just the way that she's taken this and been so willing to, and just allowed God to work and move in such a time of her life. And I think that Aunt Jessica is someone that we can all take notes from and look up to. Just the way that she's handled and she took, right, what the devil used for bad and turned it and is now glorifying God. And I think that's something that we can all look up to and take notes from and use in our own life. And so I just want to introduce my Aunt Jessica. So yeah.
So first, I would like to thank you all for coming to this very important event. I want to tell you a little bit about my son Corey. So I'm sure most of you know, in 2023, my son Corey passed away at the age of 23 from fentanyl and heroin overdose. But his story started in 2019. In 2019, he came to my husband with an issue. And we had always solved issues as a family, and we had always got through our issues. So when I came home from work, they approached me and they said we needed to sit down and talk. And I figured it was something pretty bad if they wanted to talk to me together. I had no idea what was about to hit our family. I grew up thinking you don't want to drive drinking. Pot, don't smoke marijuana. I had preached those things to him. I thought I had done everything right. I didn't even know about fentanyl. I didn't even realize that I needed to tell him not to do heroin. Hindsight, I probably should have been teaching him those things, but I was focused on the things that were happening when I was in school. So when he said that he had an issue, I thought, like so many, that we would go to rehab because I had seen it on TV. I didn't really know anybody else that had any addiction issues. We would go to rehab and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, that was not the case. We went in and out of rehabs, in and out of jail for many years until 2025. So I just want everybody to understand that addiction is blind. It doesn't care who you are. It is truly after you, and it is the devil. And he's after your families. We have to work together as a community to help each other. We've got to break the stigma. If someone's struggling with addiction and they're scared to come out because of what they're going to hear from the community for being an addict, they're never going to seek help. We've got to be where we're a loving community and people feel like they can come to us for help. So in 2023, I knew I wanted to do something for Corey for his birthday. And the only thing I could think was to go to a rehab where I could see 50 Corys looking back at me. So I got my family, and we went to CCR in Charlotte, and we fed the folks there and gave them hygiene needs and gave them a Bible. And they were so grateful that for Corey's birthday, which was January the 10th, I decided that's how we would celebrate that day. So we went back. And I knew that this was something that we needed to do more often. So from there, we started Corey's Love. And we've been going ever since. We at least go 4 times a year. That's the things that we're currently doing with Corey's Love. We go to different festivals in Lancaster and try to spread the message of overdose and awareness and give information, education. Our goals, we want to get a hub here in Lancaster. We want to have somewhere that if your child or you are struggling with addiction, you can come to this facility and we'll have rehab facilities that take this insurance or this rehab that's free, or a detox center that has a bed right now. When someone comes and they ask for help, I learned this through Corey. If you can't find a bed, they don't want help in 2 weeks. They needed help right then. And so I just want to be that resource to try to help find locations for these folks and make sure they get the help they need when they need it, or they're asking for it. And it's not necessarily, I don't think that they don't want help in 2 weeks. It's they're not strong in 2 weeks. They were strong at that moment to get help, and that's why it's important to get them help right then. And then we also want to do job readiness. So we would like to be able to help them get their resumes together, get them clothes if need be, whatever we need to do to get them ready for an interview, and then help them get placed with local businesses here in Lancaster. So they would have a clean place to work at, that they're held accountable, but yet this person knows where they're been, and they're not concerned with if they've been in jail, if they have these charges, because that's in the past. We got to look for the future, and these folks need to have a future. And then we also would like to have a men's sober living house. So those are the things that we are really hoping to get in our community and really striving, but it's definitely going to take a community effort. I also would like to introduce my board. When I tell you they are God sent, every one of them are God sent. So I have Kathy Sestar, who is the president, and then I have Debbie Gainey, she's the secretary. She's also Corey's grandmother. Dr. Michael Kimbrell, he retired in 2019, and Kim Powers. So, and Megan Bars, she is our treasurer, but she is not here today because she is on vacation. I would also like to thank JT and Hunter for coming, and Morgan, thank you so much for that song. It was absolutely beautiful. Um, Kathy, I think now we're going to turn it over and have some the award.
Acknowledgement of the. Okay. As Jessica said, I'm Kathy Sestar, and I'm honored to be president of Corey's Love. And we have been so blessed by outpouring of people and businesses in this community, which tells us that the people in the community know that this is something that we need to do. And they're willing to help, and they're willing to reach out and give of their time and their dollars, and we really appreciate that. And I want to just name a few folks that have been available to us and helped us be able to put on different programs. And there are so many individuals, I couldn't possibly name their names, but there are companies, and I'd like to just call their names out to give them acknowledgement of what they have done to help us begin to get Corey's Love mission out there. So Stars Carpet, Allied Pest Management, After Hours Heating and Air Condition, Rooted in Grace, Jalen Roberts at Salon Dimensions, C&T Carts, KB Handyman Services, Timeouts, Ingram Dirt Works, Unity Groceries, Lux Injections, Elgin Baptist Church, Grace United Methodist. These are people that have come to us and offered their time and dollars and their knowledge to us, and we really appreciate that. And I just want to say that without that, we would not be standing here today. So, Jess, we've got to, you want to do it?
So,
I'll get it.
okay. So, like I said, this is definitely something that takes a whole community. And there's certain people in our community that stand out that have really tough jobs, but even during those tough jobs, they make people feel as if they're still important. There's been situations that people have to do things that they don't necessarily want to do, but the impact that they make on someone's life at that moment, you never know what they mean to somebody. So, I'd like to say that this person truly made an impact on Corey's life. Even though she had to, I'm sure, have encounters with Corey, he still thought a lot of this lady. She truly meant a lot to him. We were at a basketball game. He was at a sober living house and doing really good, and he had came home to see my youngest son play basketball. We were at South Middle School, and he jumps up with excitement and says, "I need to go talk to her." I said, "Who?" "I need to go talk to her over there." And I said, "Well, if you're going, I'm going to go with you, because again, we're in a sober house. So, I want to make sure I'm with you at all times." And he jumps up and he wants to go talk to Officer Francis. She truly made such an impact on his life that even though she had to make tough decisions, and I'm sure had to encounter him a few times, he still respected her tremendously. And I'll tell you, as I told people about what I wanted to do, I only heard very good things about her in the community. She has truly impacted this community with a lot of love, and we appreciate you. So if you don't mind, we would like you to come up here.
This is You Make a Difference, presented to Officer Francis from Corey's Love, August the 30th. Thank you for your compassionate dedication.
was not expecting this. I was strict to be here on something else, but I'm glad I came. And I just want the family here to know sometimes we have to do our job, but we always do it with compassion. We love your family member. We're human, and we're here to support you in anything that you need. Thank you, and I love you guys. Thank you.
We're blessed to have people here tonight that have been through a struggle and come out on the winning end. And as they come and speak and tell their story, I just pray that God gives them the strength to pilot you through your journey, that you have the wisdom of God to instruct you through your journey. And may the hand of God protect you through your journey. And may the word of God instruct you on your journey. Without God, again, we wouldn't be here. And Jessica's favorite thing is it's all God. And she's right. She's right. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Chandra Hilton. And I met Chandra. We were getting ready to try to figure out who could get to speak at our first annual overdose awareness. And Mike had told me, my husband had told me about Chandra, and I didn't know her. And I said, well, we'll talk about that. And we went to a dinner, and she happened to be there, and we happened to be sitting at her table. And God, you see how God puts things together. And we talked, and she told us a story, which was unbelievable, and offered to be of any help to us whatsoever. Her story is wonderful. It's sad, but it's beautiful. And I'd like to introduce you to Sandra Hilton.
I want to thank all of you for coming too. And I want to thank Jessie for what she's doing for this community, because we surely need it. This church should really be full from all the drugs that's, just in Lancaster County. And that's my daughter, Kayla, up there now. But that's my husband that's always supports me. Would you stand up, Terry? This is my husband. And Terry and I have been married forever. We always tell people that I said, that's my high school sweetheart. And then the other day I was like, he's really not my high school sweetheart. He's my middle school sweetheart, because we met in the 6th grade, And but Terry and I, we dated a while, and we broke up. We got back together, and we were total opposites. He was wild and crazy, and my mom and dad were strict on me, And we grew up in church, and from as long as I can remember. I was born across up there at the racetrack crossroads. That's where we lived. And my mom and dad always had us in church. And I remember my dad didn't always go to church. He started going to church a little bit later. And I remember this. My brother, one day, my dad wasn't going to church, and my brother says, why do I have to go to church? You don't go. And my dad started going to church then. That's how my dad got into church. But anyway, Terry and I got married, and we've done things that we shouldn't do while we was married, and wild things, and even drugs. Drugs wasn't. I always missed church. I was in and out of church even when I got married. Terry didn't stop me from going to church. I just stopped. I had my wild side too. But drugs was not always something that I wanted to do and all. and then we drank some while we were younger, and then um, after we'd been married about 8 years, we had Kayla, and she was just the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Um, Her name was Kayla Murray Hilton, and I done hair for years. I done hair for 20 something years, and Terry's always sold cars. And then Kayla got into. She's very, very, very smart, and she was in honors class and at Buford, and then she got older, and then she had a little grandbaby one day, and her name is Layla J3, and she was the next just precious thing in our life. And I had evangelists come to our church this week, and it really hit me what he said. So I'm here tonight to tell you this. He said, he told us, he said, write this down. He said, it's sometimes we go through struggles, then there's sweetness, and then there's sharing. I'm like, wow, God just said that to me. So tonight, I'm here to tell you a struggle. And some of you may say, well, God, what's sweetness out of a death of a child? And then I'm going to share that with you. I noticed one day I noticed that Kayla, when Layla, my granddaughter, turned about 4 years old, I noticed the difference in Kayla. I was going to her house, and she lived very close to us, and I always noticed she was in the bed. And I didn't see her high, but I just noticed she was in the bed. And I had to work a lot on Saturday. I cut hair in Charlotte most of the time, and then eventually I ended up in Waxhaw. And my husband came home. He said, I hate to tell you this. He said, but she's doing pills. Well, I didn't think nothing. I had seen people on drugs, but I had never been around it. I had no idea what journey I was about to go down. I thought as a mom, oh, I'll fix it. I'll go over there and tell her, you putting them pills down. You're not going to do that. I'll tear your hiney up, and blah-blah. And no, it don't work like that. I had no idea. And then it became, she started doing stronger pills, more pills. And then she just, to where we had to get her little girl. And like I said, Layla was 4. She's been with us since she was 4. She's 15 now. And but after Kayla, she had lots of wrecks. She was very lucky to be alive. We've had people knock on our doors at night, and I knew they would say, "Ask for Terry," and they've pulled her out of the woods plenty of times. That they were 2 wrecks that God just saved her then. And if you've been through this, it's just terrible to go through this. And sometimes, I'm speaking for me, some people ask, to me, it's worse when an addict lives with you. That's me. I could not take that, and I'm also glad that Kayla did not want us to see her high. She would always go away wherever she was. She would always go away, and did I ever see her high? Yes, I seen her 3 or 4 times high, but that's because she didn't live with us. And her little girl would miss her. And when she was 4 and 5 and 6, her little girl would say, I miss my mommy. And I would say, okay. And I would call Kayla, and I'd say, Kayla, I need you to get yourself together. Your little girl misses you. Layla misses you. And she would come home, and she would be clean. And she could only stay a night or 2, and then she'd have to leave. And that's how we did it. And I had somebody tell me one time, I wouldn't even let her see her. But see, they don't have no idea what you go through. So what I done was I made sure, as for me, I had to make sure my little granddaughter was okay. And so Kayla would come home, and she would see little Layla, and Layla would be so happy. And the next day, she wouldn't even cry. She'd say, Mom, I'll see you soon, okay? And we do that about every month until Layla would tell me that she missed her mommy. That's how we done it. And she would be clean when she would, come home and all. And that's what God told me to do, and that's to keep my little girl happy. Um, and in let's see, right before Kayla passed, she was then she had got to doing heroin. I had no idea these days what some of these drugs are. I don't even know, and all. And I went over. We dealt with this. That was about 2014 um, when Kayla started doing drugs. It was around 2013, and she was let's see, 2013 and 14. She started doing drugs and all, and then it, like I said, it turned to heroin. And she did go get help a couple of times. And when she did go get help and she would come home, we would lay back there and she was clean, because she did come to live with us then as long as she was clean. And we would lay back there in the bed and we would just have the just most wonderful talks that we'd had. And she taught me a lot about drugs. She taught me it was a struggle. She told me don't blame anybody else. And she said, cause Mom, I have a choice. They didn't make me do this. She always asked me not to blame, other people. She said, cause I had a choice. So when they in their right mind, they will tell you things like this. If she was here, she would tell you that today. And but the day I had left, Kayla was clean, and I had left to go. She even worked with her dad at the car lot. She was working for him. She could run it while he was gone to the sales and all. And me and Layla was going to the lake, and that Friday I went to see Layla. But before that, Kayla had lived with us 2 weeks before she passed. And she kept telling us that she couldn't breathe good, and she did have a sinus infection, and I saw her medicine for a sinus infection. And I said, well, you done took all your sinus medicine. I said, you need to go to the doctor. And she would say, no, I'll be all right. But she still kept telling us she couldn't hardly breathe. And so I was at work on a Saturday, and I told Terry, I said, see if you can get her to go to the doctor. And he texted me, and he said, I can't get her to go. So when I come home, I said, let me take you to the doctor. And she says, no, I'm fine. I'll be all right. I still don't breathe as good, but I'll be all right. I won't never forget. She said, what we going to eat for supper? And we had hot dogs, and she drank the Gatorade. I won't never forget. And it was just those wonderful weeks, because, see, she was clean. And then one evening I came home, and she was gone, and she called. She said, Mom, I come home. She lived like 2 minutes from us. She said, I come on back home. She said, cause, I feel good and I'll feel better. And I know now, looking back, that Donna's reason she felt better, because she was with Mom and Dad. She felt good with us, and her little girl was there. And so she went back home, and on a Friday I went to see her, and she looked so pretty. I could see her, come to the living room, and I hugged her, and I told her bye, and I said, I'll see you when we get back from the lake. So and she hugged Layla and all. So we went to the lake, and on a Monday we came back, and she was texting me, and her text wasn't quite making sense, or she was so sick. She said, I can't hardly text you. Well, about that time I was in her yard, and I went run in her house, and she said, Mom, I am so sick. And so Layla was in the car. She said, I don't want Layla to see me. I said, you look fine. I said, just tell her that you're sick. And she turned around and she told Layla, she said, hey, baby. She said, Mama's not feeling good. And we took her straight to the hospital. And at that time I had to call Terry and come get Layla. And then I went in there with Kayla, and she started crying. She said, Mom, she said, I have sepsis and I have pneumonia. And I said, well, honey, you're at the best place. You're at the hospital. It's okay. And as they took her up to the room, and and as a mom, you still don't ever think of losing a child, no matter what. You just cannot go there. You don't think about losing a child. And I told her, I said, I'll stay with you. I will stay with you. And I never left her side. And the doctor, I told the doctor, something told me, just tell him that I'll stay with her tonight. And he said that would be a good idea. That was kind of scared me, but it's still, as for me, I didn't know she was that sick. And so we went in there. She was on the up floor. That's ICU. And but she was talking just like me and you. I was talking to her just like this, and the doctors kept asking her all kind of questions. He was on the TV above her and answering her questions and stuff like that, and um, asking her had she been out of the country, this and that, and she was like, no, no, no. And that night, um, they told me that if she didn't get no better, they'd probably have to fly her out. But there was a nurse that is my dear sweet friend now, is Karen Brackett. She was my daughter's nurse. She was in there. And my daughter that night, I knew, she asked me, she said, Mom, will you get into bed with me? I said, sure. And I jumped into bed with her and I put my arms around her. But before that, I want to share this with you because I want to tell you the sweetness of things. That evening, Terry brought Layla back, and we had some family come in. And her little girl was standing there. And I'll never forget, they were holding hands and just loving each other. And she looked at her little girl and she said, I love you. She said, I'll always love you. And her little girl said, I love you too, Mommy. And she said, Papa, I'll always take care of you. If anything happens, Papa will always take care of you. She said, okay. That's the last time she ever saw her mama. But she was talking just like this. She didn't have anything on her. So that night, she asked me would I get into bed with her. I got into bed with her. And I loved her, but I knew I could not pray my daughter into heaven. I know that wasn't how it worked. And I did pray with her, but I told her, I said, Layla, you need to talk to God. And I truly believe that she's in heaven. She had already got saved when she was younger. She just had got away from God. And Mitch Ingram was her preacher then when she was saved. And I told her that she would have to pray and she would have to talk to God. And the next day, they told me they were going to fly her out. So they flew her out. That morning, they had a big old mass. Kayla's breathing had got so bad she couldn't breathe. And they flew her to Charlotte. But every night, I stayed every night, and family would come, and Terry, he would come every evening. He was working. I said, you work, and you just come up here whenever you want to. He would come every evening and sit a while with me until we run him off and all. But I would sleep on a couch where I could see her face. And they told me that my daughter was very, very sick. They kept telling me she was very, very sick, but I still didn't think, that my daughter would die. I just didn't. And about that Thursday, I do believe in signs from God. I don't know how many of y'all do, but I surely do. And about that Thursday, I said, God, help me. I said, but first the doctor came in there. This is why I asked God to do this. The doctor came in there and I said, I saw Kayla's toes was turning black. And I knew what that meant. I knew she wasn't getting circulation. And I said, my niece came up there and she said, you need to talk to a doctor. I said, I talk to doctors every day. She said, no, you really need to talk to a doctor because she's in the medical field. I said, okay. She's sitting there with me, and this little young girl, I never will forget her. She said, Miss Hilton, she said, your daughter is very sick. I said, is that machine breathing for her? She said, yes, ma'am. And I said, okay. She said, but let me go get the doctor. And the doctor came in. He told me the same thing that his little nurse had told me. He said, Miss Hilton, he told me that machine was breathing for her. And I think it's 72 or 74 hours. You're either going to turn for the worse or the better. And I said, he said, usually for 72 hours, your daughter, they turn worse for the better. And I said, well, when will her 72 hours be up? He said, they were up 2 days ago. And I was like, wow. And I thought, oh, y'all didn't even tell me, and it's okay. I thought, he said, Miss Hilton, we'll do whatever you want us to do. We'll do whatever you want us to do. And that little girl, she told me, she said, Miss Hilton, whatever decision you make, it will be the right decision. I'll never forget her telling me that. So me and Terry, we talked, and at 6 o'clock on Saturday, they took her off the ventilator, and like in 20 minutes, she just calmly went. And so the sweetness is how you get that out of your daughter's death. Is because I thank God that He gave me the strength to be here. Because if it wasn't for God, I could not stand in front of you. Because after my daughter passed, we had a place at the lake, and like I said, I drank, but God had been working on me and Terry then. And y'all know Lake Water is nothing but a big muddy lake. But that day, me and my two sisters went down there, and I had alcohol beside me. I had a bottle of alcohol. But I saw the sky, and I saw the lake just beautiful like I'd never seen it before. That's all God. And I picked up the alcohol, and I drank one. Didn't want no more. But a part of me, the devil was saying, drink that. And I wanted to die myself. I wanted to drink and drink and drink till I just died. That's how I felt. And then a part of me wanted to live because God had gave me that granddaughter. So the next time I drove to the lake, me and Layla, I said, God, would you please take this taste from me? I usually get out, unpack the car, and I used to pop the top on the beer. That day I got out, thought about it, but I never did. That night I'm like, oh, it's on now. I ain't never got to drink again. And I had never touched one since. Yeah. And it's just, and so for mothers and fathers, if it wasn't for me having a relationship, I couldn't make it. I really couldn't. But Terry and I are both in church. Terry's an elder in our church now, and I teach an addiction class. God has called me right when my daughter first passed away. I wanted to do something for others so bad. I've been interviewed several times, and I watched our coroner be interviewed, and she said a lot of people need so much help. And it clicked. I wanted to start a van. I wanted to start helping those on drugs to get them here and get them there to work or to their lawyer, wherever they had to go. But that wasn't working then. So about a year later, our preacher came up and asked me to do an addiction class, me, him, and one of my friends. And then I thought, wow, I was trying on my own to do it. But God was giving me a year to grieve. And now I teach addiction class every Tuesday night at Frontline Micro Church. And I love all those in addiction. And Lancaster does have a lot of help around here. And I want to thank you. Melissa Newman always told me at Joe Mars when I'd go see her, she didn't know me, but I knew her a little bit and knew her family. And she'd always say, don't give up on your daughter. Then Melissa would talk to me a little bit more. She got used. She'd say, don't give, and I would leave there and I'd always have hope. And I want to thank you for that. For Shannon, House of Pearls, there's a lot of help. Ground 40 in Lancaster if you want it. And if there's anybody here on drugs tonight, I promise you life is better with the relationship with God. I've never flew in my life, and my cousin decorated the White House and invited me to go to the White House. And Terry says, you going? You're going to fly? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not scared. I said, I'm safe now. I said, if the plane goes, you know, and him and Layla, I looked at him and I said, and Layla's like, don't say that. And I said, if anything happens, I'll see you in heaven. And I flew for the first time. I'm not scared, you know, anymore. It's just God takes the fear, you know, away from you. And it just helped me so much. And but I just wanted y'all to know that my struggle and the sweetness, and I'm sharing with y'all. And if I can ever help anybody, y'all welcome to give my number out. I've talked to plenty of moms on the telephone. Sometimes they just need to vent. They just need somebody to talk to. So, and I thank y'all for coming. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Christy Reynolds. I learned, sorry, I learned about Christy on Facebook. I don't think we know each other without Facebook, but I think Tabitha said it the other day when we were eating. You begin to think you have this relationship with someone on Facebook, like you know them personally. So I feel like we're really good friends. But I watched Christy on Facebook and her journey that she so openly shared through recovery, and how much she loved the Lord, and she just continuously testified on Facebook how good God was, and how well her recovery was coming. And she impressed me, I mean, enormously. You really are such a brave girl, and you've done so well, and her recovery is going great. And I just wanted her to share her story because I've never really heard the full story, but I do know the Facebook story, and it's wonderful. So I would really like to hear the full story. So thank you, Christy.
Ain't God good? My name is Christy Reynolds. I'm 40 years old. I grew up in a small town, Bethune, South Carolina. Growing up, I was in church every Sunday singing I'll Fly Away. Um, I was in church my whole life. I had a good childhood, but I did notice when I was a little girl, I was always real fearful of somebody dying. When I would walk my little sister to class, I would feel like crying. I was always so fearful, and I felt like the devil was attacking my mind even back then. Um, as I got older in like the sixth grade, I got into this little popular clique, and that's when things really started to change for me. I met this boy, and ended up getting pregnant at 16. And he ended up going to a federal prison. And I had a little boy at 16. Um, I got in a wreck and started taking pain pills. And with my pregnancy with Tyler, it was pretty hard. I was very sick with Tyler. But 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 thank God, he had other plans. Um, I met a man, a really good man. Um, got married, had kids. Was doing good. I had what everybody wanted, like everything. And then things started to change. Like I never felt like I was good enough ever. I always felt like something was missing. Um, and um, and when my dad died, things really took a turn for the worst. Um, I really didn't care to live anymore. I woke up in the morning. I would take pills throughout the day. That's all I did. I had no life other than that. That's all I did was just take pills. I just existed. I wasn't living a life. I was just there. Um, and one day, I couldn't find the pills, and I met this guy, and I got introduced to the devil, and that was heroin because the pills were getting harder to find. And so I tried heroin for the first time, and that's all it took. That one time, I was hooked immediately. I was like, this is what I've been searching for. Like, um, I walked out on my husband and my kids. I, I left, to do was get high. I sold every single thing I had, down to my straightener, down to my shoes. I was living in my car. I was living here. I was living there. I wouldn't eat. It was really bad. It got really bad. I got down to about 98 pounds. Things started getting worse and worse and worse. I ended up going to Chrysalis, and that really, I think God started working with me then. There was a nurse there who said, "Why don't you feel?" I told her, I said, "I know my kids are fine." I said, "They have, I don't want them to be with me. I'm out here living in my car, here, there." I said, "I know they're fine." I said, "But I've always struggled with the inner being, like I'm not good enough, like I wasn't, I just always felt like something was missing." And she said, "Well, God gave you those kids. He chose you to be their mom." And that stuck with me that day. And I was like, you know what? God did give me those kids. And that stuck with me. A little while later, well, I missed a big part of the story. During the time, before I went to Chrysalis, I got pregnant with my daughter, who is 10 now. She, I had to go to rehab because, getting in trouble here, there, and they were like, "You gotta go to keep her." So I was like, "Okay, I'll go." So I went, and I got clean. I got off the heroin. I didn't do heroin anymore. I never touched it again. I went into that rehab center. I asked God, I was like, "God, will you please take me off these drugs? I need your help." And I was sincere, and when I prayed that, and he did. I never touched heroin again, but I started hanging back around with those same people, places, things, and little by little, I started picking up things, and and a year later, I was back strung out again on not heroin, but, pills, alcohol, Xanax, the other things. I was living with my mom one night, and I was drinking pretty bad, and I went to bed, and my little girl also lost her dad from an overdose, and she said, "Mama, when you die, who am I going to live with?" And I said, "What?" Mind you, that night I dreamed that I died. And I said, "Did you hear me talking in my sleep?" She said, "No, Mama, I dreamed that you died." And that sent chills through my body. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I had started going to church, and I had started going to church and going to church. And I knew that the Lord was working on me, but I didn't know how fast it was going to go. I went to church, and I was praying. I was like, "God, please, you're going to have to help me." And it was like that next day, I got up, and I said, "God, you got to help me through the day." And he helped me through that day. I got through that whole day. No alcohol, no drugs, no nothing. And I was like, "Oh my God, I made it through a whole day." And I started going to church on Sundays, and God started peeling back. I could started feeling again. I could feel again. I was so numb for all these years. I couldn't feel anything. And when I got to church, and I started, listening to the preacher and hearing these songs, and I started to cry. I could feel something. And when I went down to the altar, and I started really feeling God's presence, and I thank God He saved me when He did. I feel like I would not have been here. I feel like God let me dream that night to show me, if you don't change, you're fixing to leave here. And I really do feel like that dream that she had it really scared me. And it really made me think, this little girl, doesn't have a dad, her grandma had passed, her aunt passed, her other uncle passed. I mean, it's just like so many people were passing. And I was like, "God, you got to really help me here." And he did. And I stand here 3 years, no alcohol, no nothing. Yes. Yes. I want to thank Jessica for giving us all hope. It's people like her that change the world every day. And I just thank God for saving me. You know, I really, really do. People think it's glamorous, and it's not. When you're sick and you're just out here going to jail, there's nothing glamorous about it. And it gets bad. It's real ugly. And I just, if anybody's struggling with drugs, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'll help you any way I can. And I'll be praying for you. And but what really helped me, I've been to rehab after rehab. I had to want it, and I had to stop blaming other people, and I had to get real with myself. And that's what I did. I stopped blaming other people, and I was like, "You did this. You got to fix it for that for your little girl, for your older kids, you know." And I thank God for bringing me this far. I can't wait to see what God has in store for me and my family. And thank y'all for letting me speak.
I'd like to introduce one of my favorite folks, Melissa. Come on up, Melissa. I met Melissa. She was a waitress at Joe Mars. I didn't know her, but when I met her there, I just thought she was the most wonderful thing in the world, and she was so bubbly and so happy. And I thought, my gosh, people don't need it. She's got to be on something. But, but my daughter Pamela was with me. But Pamela, my daughter, and she told me about Melissa. She gave me a little bit about her background, this type of thing, and I said, "You got to be kidding! No, this girl, she is. God, how could this happen to her or whatever?" And Melissa's story is one that is just, if it doesn't give you encouragement, and if it doesn't make you believe that there is help out there and hope out there, then there's no hope, because this lady, she just exuberates that feeling. So please, Melissa, your story.
I don't know if I can live up to that, but we'll see. My name's Melissa Harrison. Melissa Newman for 50 years. And at 50, I met the love of my life. So we'll get there. We'll get there later. But he puts up with me daily. He puts up with this and all of me. So good. Thank you. You're doing great. You might need to move it back. I talk loud anyway. Okay. I'm going to take glasses off and on. I'm going to skip around. I'm going to move around because that's what I do. And I already know that. I got a little cheat sheet here. But I brought something. Every time I speak, I have this little band with me. And I've never pulled it out of my purse. I've never had the courage to pass it around. And whether it's right or wrong or good or bad or how it's going to go, it doesn't matter anymore. This is a band from when I was just a number. You don't start out looking like this or feeling like this or wanting to tell people your story because your story's ugly and nasty. Makes you want to cry and sometimes throw up. My clean date is 3/14/07. For your math magicians, that's 18 years, 5 months, and 23 days today. And I think the best part of my recovery is meeting all these people. Like, I knew every one of the speakers when she put out the flyer. I said, "Oh, wow, I'm so excited to be a part of this." So thank you. And thank you for being a light in a really dark world. The stigma that goes along with addiction is bad. People will talk about you. People will criticize you. People still do. I've been around 18 years and it still happens, but I'm okay with that today because I know who I am. Addiction started for me a long time ago. My parents owned the biggest bar in the state of South Carolina. It was quoted that, I think, in like 85. It was Bar's Tavern. I always thought I was, queen of the bar. I could out-drink you, out-talk you, out-dance you, whatever it was, get you in free and get as many drinks as we wanted. And I think it started there in the beginning. mother-in-law told me God picked me because I could sure say a lot in 15 minutes, so we're going to see. My last run, I went to several treatment centers, rehabs, jail. But my last run, my last high, lasted 7 years. And when I tell you it lasted 7 years, I didn't do anything, even make a pot of coffee, without being high. I was either asleep, in jail, or high, or waiting on it, or looking for it. That was my story for 7 years, day in and day out, 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, it didn't matter. I lied, I stole, I cheated. I mean, during that 7 years, so much horrible things happened. My mother passed away. They had to come and find me. I can remember being at a hotel, and they're telling me my brother was outside, and I said, "What?" And they told me my mother had passed. I was so high, I thought they were lying to try to get me to come home. I thought they made it up. And how dare them make up this story that my mother died. My best friend, my biggest enabler, my go-to, my person that always fixed everything when I did come home. Every time I came home, whether it was car insurance, wrecked the car, fixed the car, buy more clothes, no matter what it was, she was my fixer. She was my everything. And it took me a long time to get over the way I looked and portrayed myself at her funeral. It was horrible. But since then, I remember going to a funeral with a friend of mine. Her dad had been actually murdered. And when her sister went down the aisle, they had to go find her. But when you're in recovery, you learn to help people rather than criticize people. When she walked down that aisle with her family, somebody in the pew where I was sitting made a comment, an ugly comment. "Look at her." I said, "Don't you say a word." And I did it just like that. "Don't you say a word. Give her a chance. In 5 years, she'll be like us standing here, praising God." Because you just don't never know. You just don't never know. I know that when I went down through there, I probably had greasy hair and looked horrible. I probably weighed 98 pounds soaking wet. I had a 16-page criminal record. I had a court date that came up while I was out doing my thing. The court date was March 13th, 2007. So just for those that wonder, March 14th, 2007 was not a glorious day. Not then, anyway. But March 13th, I wasn't going to go to court. I had just decided I'll pay the bondsman. That's what I usually do. I'll just pay him and not go. But I got a phone call from my bondsman that my daddy and my brother were looking for me, and they were at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. And I had not talked to them in almost the 7 years, probably the whole 7 years. When I tell you I was gone and I was high, I was gone and I was high for those 7 years. I didn't call my family. I didn't go home for a visit. I was gone. If they seen me, it was on the website. I do recall my brother coming to the jail one day in Mecklenburg County. They came and told me I had a visitor. And of course it was my lawyer, because that's the only person that ever showed up to see me. And that woman said, "Not unless he looks just like you." And I was like, "What?" And it was my brother. He had a picture of my now sister-in-law. And he said, "I really need you to come home. I need you to get it together, and I need you to come home. I'd like for you to meet her. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and Mama's gone. I'd really like for you to come meet her." I remember saying, "God, she don't want to meet me, but okay, whatever." So a few more weeks or months passed, and the court date came up, and when the bondsman called me, I wasn't going to answer the phone because I knew he just wanted me to go to court. I was on bond. He said, "Your dad and your brother are at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse waiting for you." And I said, I'm not coming, and you don't even know my dad." He said, "Well, he called my phone. I don't know how he got my number, but he called." I said, "Well, if you got his number, what is it? You got caller ID?" And he gave me my dad's cell phone number, and I called. My daddy's exact words were, I can't do this for you, but I will do anything in this world in my power to help you. But you have to help yourself. You got to show up. You got to be here. I will be here until this courthouse closes at 5 o'clock. This was at like 9:30 in the morning. We're not leaving, but you got to show up. I called the drug dealer. I got to have some dope to get me to the courthouse because that's how bad it was. I told you I couldn't even make coffee. So into the courthouse I went with my stuff in my pocket, dinged going through the machine, praying it wasn't the dope. It wasn't. Something else gone. Okay. I'm in the bathroom getting high and got a failure to appear. Same day, March 13th, 2007. Daddy and Randy finally pried me out of the bathroom. I went into the courtroom and was sentenced to DOC. I didn't even know what Department of Corrections meant. And a lawyer said, prison. And I said, what? Prison? But you know, with addiction, how you use and you use and you use and you keep using and you keep using. Well, jail's the same way. You go to jail and you just keep going back and you just keep going back and you just keep going back. Well, when they took me to prison, thank God, by the grace of God, they gave me a 4 to 6 month sentence. I thank God for that judge. I didn't that day. I didn't that day. But I remember being there, and this little blonde came up to me and she said, oh God, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. And I said, you don't either. She said, girl, it's my 3rd time. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. You've been here 3 times? Okay. So here we have an opportunity to change something. Because I'm either gonna keep coming back here like I did jail and like I did with drugs and like I did with everything else, or I remember getting saved in the church prison. You couldn't go to the front to kneel like you do in a church. You had to stand where you were, and they say, if you say what we say, you'll be saved. And I did that the Sunday before I was to be released. And I prayed a lot that week. Let me go back and tell you something about stigma before I finish that story about getting out of prison. While I was there, I had to call my brother. Okay, I didn't have my mom, and I didn't have anybody else in my life. I needed bras and panties. Anybody that's ever been to jail or prison, you can't have a bra with a wire because they think you're going to stab somebody with the wire in your bra. Okay? Women know what I mean, the wire. Okay? So I needed some bras and panties. So I had to call my brother, which was quite embarrassing, and tell him I needed bras and panties, and I didn't know who else to ask. He said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to find somebody to go get me some and send me a box. And they called my name, and I went down and I got a box. And it was from my sister-in-law. I didn't know her then, had never met her. She wasn't my sister-in-law yet. But it was bras and it was panties and it was so cute stuff, and it had a letter that said she couldn't wait to meet me. And she was so excited that her boyfriend had a sister. And I remember sitting on my bed and I cried and cried and cried because why would she want to meet me? Are you kidding me? Are you joking, right? This woman that's dating my brother, and this is before my brother ever went to law school or anything, okay? Didn't have any idea he was even planning on it. Thank you, baby. I had no idea he was even planning on it. And but there's this letter about she can't wait to meet me. She was so excited he had a sister, and I thought, but I'm in prison. Are you kidding? But she had pictures also of my whole family, even my mom's dog, okay? I mean, she had pictures of everybody, pictures that made me think of these people and want to come home. Stigma didn't bother her. Don't let it bother you. Pray for these people. Pray for our community. Pray for the world, for God's sakes. We're not all bad people. We just had a bad time, a really bad start sometimes. I came from a really good family. I did not grow up in church, but they were good people. You know, it just, okay, anyway. Back to the day I got out. I always say God intervened that day too, because they were shipping me back to Mecklenburg County, and I remember there was always this payphone there, and you could put a dime or a quarter in it, and you could call somebody local, like the drug dealer or the other people I knew in Mecklenburg County that could just come get me and take me back to the dope house. That was so much easier to do than calling and putting $2 in the phone and calling Lancaster for someone to come and get me and take me home. But you know, I always had a plan. But this time when I walked out, I looked at that payphone, and there was my brother sitting there. First night at home sucked. I'm not going to tell you any stories. It was terrible. It was horrible. It was draining listening to them decide where I'm going to spend the night, because nobody trusted me to stay in their house. But there I was, and I fell asleep on top of the cover, crying, you know, because they didn't want me there. Next day I woke up and I called my dad to take me to a drug meeting, is all I knew they were called. I ended up in an NA. Now I'll tell you, I don't have anything bad to say about NA. They helped save my life. They were there when I needed them. I learned a lot of things. I'm glad that I broadened my horizons, so to speak. I have gone to NA, AA, Celebrate Recovery. I've been to Chain Breakers. I've been with the House of Pearls. I go to Antioch Baptist Church. I've done a lot of things different since back then. I became a peer support specialist, and during that time in the program, you learn a lot of things, and that you learn that everybody doesn't need the same thing. Some people can just go to church and get saved and be wonderful. Some people need NA because they need that support, or AA because they need that supporter. And I'm for all of them. I respect all of them, and hope all the best for anybody that goes to any of those 12-step programs. I remember, just to get to the better part, I did work at Joe Mars for 10 years. I told Kathy Sestar the other day that I thought I was going to work as a waitress or restaurant manager for the rest of my life. That's because I remember when I was getting out, they were like, well, don't go apply at Bank of America, you know. Go to somewhere local and get a job. I also heard a man speak, and he said after 10 years, he was able to get a real job and get his records straightened out and do all this stuff. And I remember going up to him and saying, it took 10 years, huh? I had about 18 months clean then. But he said, yeah. So at about 9 years, I went and become the peer support specialist. And my idea was I was going to go to work in the field of recovery, but that didn't happen. I got a message one day out of the blue about coming to work for the county, and I thought, I don't know this woman, you know. I went to this interview that was really intimidating. It was a four panel asking me questions. The first question was, what's your greatest accomplishment? I've never been married at that time. I didn't have any children. I did not walk across the stage and graduate high school. I didn't know what to say, except I had just celebrated 10 years in recovery. And I froze. So during that 4-panel interview with Lancaster County, I said, I don't know what to say, except that I probably don't even qualify for this position. I'm probably wasting your time. I do have a record. But my greatest accomplishment is that I just celebrated 10 years in recovery. And it was a meeting. It was all about me, and it was all the people I've helped over the years. And I cried the whole time, and my dad cried the whole time. And my brother's always been my biggest fan, and they've always come to every meeting, every year to celebrate with me. I looked up, and 2 of them were crying, and one said, I think we found our girl. And I just, you know, I left, and I called my brother, and I was like, I think I'm going to get that job. And he's like, you know, he's always been very protective, and he says, don't worry. If you don't get it, something good will come along. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm at Belts. I'm going to buy some good clothes. I'm getting that job. And he's like, but please don't get your hopes up. He was so worried I was going to be disappointed. And before I got in the door at Belts, the phone rang, and it was HR with Lancaster County, and they gave me that job. So I've been with the county for I'm right at 9 years now. I'm coming up on 9 years. So it didn't get glorious overnight. People didn't trust me the day I come home. I wasn't trustable. I didn't trust myself. But praise the Lord, God has changed my life. I always wanted to go to church and find a spot in the world that I felt like I fit in, and I didn't fit in for a long time. I went to several different ones, and a lot of times I would feel like the preacher was talking about drugs and alcohol because I was sitting there and they were trying to make me fit in. It was just strange to me, and I just couldn't make it work. And I kept wanting to go to Antioch because a lot of my friends went there, and some other people in recovery, and then they helped the House of Pearls, and I was like, yeah, okay. And one night out of the blue, Wednesday night, I just walked in by myself, and a friend of mine, Jenny Sestar, come up and said, come sit with me, and it was I want to say it was near Thanksgiving that year, because a lot of people were going around and saying what they were thankful for, and they were calling people's names, and they were asking, where did you get saved? Do you remember where you got saved? And my friend, Mr. Harned, which was a deacon there, but he was sitting there, and I remember speaking to people, but people was raising their hand, and someone was at church camp, and some was here, and some was at a different church, and he raised his hand and said, on the rehab floor. And I looked at him, and he nodded, and a tear rolled down my face, and when I raised my hand, the preacher called my name, and I thought, how did he know my name? But he did, and I said, in a prison church. That's the first time I'd ever been in that church. But the shame, the guilt, the pressure, all of it left me when I went into that church. And I just love that church. I love God. And I just love the fact that he let me find acceptance there. After that, I met my wonderful husband that I'd really known all my life, but we joined the church together. We had our dream wedding, my dream wedding, in the church, and today life is really, really good. I will say that I almost let him get away because I didn't want to tell him my story. He don't have Facebook, so he didn't know anything about me. And I just remember kind of blowing him off, like, I didn't want to have to tell him all the things I just told you, because I thought, if I'm going to date him and really be serious about it, I'm going to have to tell him. But, he had his own story. Addiction has affected everybody in some way, shape, or form, or their family, or their neighbor, somebody. So he let me know that it was okay, and I love you so much, and thank you for always supporting me and always loving me no matter what, and I feel the same way. So, okay, yeah, I got I will say this too. When before I ever started church, my 11-year-old nephew, we were playing Bible trivia with someone that's never read the Bible. And I told him, Alexander, I don't know if I can do that. He asked me a question, an easy question, and I didn't know the answer. And I said, Alexander, I didn't grow up in church like you, but I'm learning. He said, I'll teach you, Aunt Sissa. I cried all the way home and called my brother, still crying, and have been in church ever since. So anyway, I just appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. Thank y'all so much. I'm sure I left out a lot of stuff. If anybody ever needs any help, any direction, please reach out. I'm an open book. My life is an open book. I work in Lancaster County, so look me up. Thank y'all.
So our next speaker she holds a really special place in my heart. When I was telling you that Corey told us about his addiction when he was 19, he went and lived with this young lady for a while, and I like to think they took care of each other in their darkest moments. Before I even knew who she was, I prayed for her and I prayed for Corey. I have no doubt that Corey is so proud of you and so happy for you. If he was here, he'd be your biggest cheerleader, no doubt. He would be rooting you on, hugging you to death, because he was a toucher and a lover. But our next speaker is Tabitha Henson. Tabitha, you are something to really admire. I'm truly proud of you. You are a brave, brave young lady.
I've been trying to hold it together and not cry, but Jessica didn't help. When we look at addicts, we often wonder, how did you end up there? How did you end up like this? If we're the child of the addict, we ask, why don't you love me enough to change? For the parent of that addict, we often ask ourselves, where did I go so wrong to cause you to end up like this? If you're a friend or family member, we ask, why can't you just stop and get it together? Preachers can often look at addicts and say, well, maybe if you'd gotten them in church sooner, then this wouldn't have happened. Therapists will look at addicts and they'll say, well, what was the trauma that caused you to get here? And doctors may even look at you and say, well, it's genetics, so sooner or later you were going to end up like this anyways. And as an ex-addict myself, I've often asked myself all these questions. My biological father was in his addiction and still is to this day, so he's never been a part of my life. But I was raised by my mother and who I call Dad, and always will call Dad. And I grew up with them drinking my whole life. So when I got to high school and started hanging around people who were drinking, it just felt normal. It felt natural. It was just, this is what people do with their spare time. And I don't blame my parents. But society has made alcohol a very normal thing. We don't look at alcohol the same way we do drugs. But I know firsthand that it's just as, if not even more traumatic. My drinking carried me through high school and beyond, and I met a man in a bar. We started dating, had a couple kids, got married, and we tried to build a life together. But we were both very heavy drinkers, which caused a lot of fighting. So we separated, and I kept drinking. And on my way home from a bar one night, I hit a tree and ended up in ICU. I was sent home with a prescription of bed rest and Opanas. And this was the catalyst for my opiate addiction. It was the perfect storm of emotional pain, physical pain, and years upon years of shame and regret that I've been walking in. And those pills just made it all go away. I had found my solution to all my problems. And it wasn't even a year later that I was prescribed those Opanas that I, like Christy's story, I walked away from everything. I was listening to you talk, and I was like, girl, you're telling my story. But I did, walked away from my husband, walked away from my kids, was working at the bank in their corporate office, walked away from my job. I walked away from everything. Anyone that cared about me, I walked away from because I was hooked. I was. Heroin and meth had become my God. And I've heard several people say tonight that, that it's the devil. And it is. We make it a God. And at that point in my life, I would give up anything to serve that God. I stayed in my addiction for about 3.5, maybe 4 years. Ending up in and out of jail. I tried rehab one time for a whole 2 weeks. I would try and quit on my own, go stay with a friend. My sister tried to help me. I would try and quit on my own and swear that I was never going to do it again, only to turn around the very next day and just get high again. My solution had taken everything from me. and continued to take, not just from me, but from my friends too. Day after day and month after month, year after year, we kept feeding our heroin gods, and I watched it take friend after friend. I was all too acquainted with Narcan and CPR. It was just a way of life. February 3rd of 2020, I was arrested for the last time and spent the next 8 months in jail. I went from there to House of Pearls, where I spent the next year learning about a very different God, the one true God, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end. I met a God who no longer took life, but he gave life, because he is the author of life. And you probably know him as Jesus. But of all the names that I know him by, my favorite is Redeemer. I came to know the truth, and the truth had set me free. Every question, every fear, every doubt, and every hurt that I'd ever had in my life was answered once I knew the truth about the gospel. Once I learned that I was created by God and for God, that I no longer had to question what was my purpose on this earth, or did I even have a purpose. I learned that sin entered this world and separated us from our God. So the constant questioning of why did this happen, or why does everything feel so broken? Why do good things happen to bad people, or why do bad things happen to good people? The answer is sin. We live in a broken world, and our problems are either a direct result from our sin or from someone else's. I heard the truth of the gospel that Jesus came and made a way for us back to God. That the answer to sin is forgiveness of sins. And while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. God didn't wait for us to get it right and find a way back to become good enough. And he didn't wait for us to find a way to become good enough to get back to him. But Jesus took on flesh and became the way for us back to him. And then I found my favorite part of the gospel is that one day he will come back and make everything right. And for those that believe and follow him, we'll have a new heaven and a new earth. There'll be no more pain, no more sin, and he is coming back for his bride. And the best news is that if you have placed your faith in Christ, that this life here is the worst that it will ever be. But if you haven't, then I'm sorry to tell you, my friend, but this is the best it's ever going to get for you. Because your afterlife is eternal separation from God. But once you commit your life to the Lord, he doesn't wait until life after death to start making all things new. He brings heaven down to earth and starts making you new from day one. From the very first day that he takes up residence in you, he begins that work in you. And since committing my life to the Lord and following him, gosh, I was so broken. I was so sad all the time. Again, I just felt pointless, hopeless, that my life just had no purpose. I was very aimless in life. But since meeting my Savior, he has restored me back to my children. Whenever I came to House of Pearls, I hadn't seen or spoken to my children in 2 years. They were young, and I, like Christy, thought, they're better off without me. But that's not true. That is not true. I think we often overlook what addiction does to children. And they get forgotten about a lot. And I just really encourage you, if you've gone through addiction, or if you know anyone who has, and they have children that have gone through that, then get them therapy, guys, because they need it. They really do. Don't forget about them. We often want to fix the addict and think that'll fix the problem, but there's broken relationships with the parents and with the siblings, and especially the children. They don't forget about them. But God has restored me back to my children. He's given me a job that I love. I work at a Cause for Tea, which is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering women and children, demonstrating God's love one teacup at a time. I'm head chef there, which is really cool. You know, I went to culinary school. I always loved being in the hospitality industry, but it's very, there's a lot of drugs and alcohol in that scene. So I never thought that's anything that I would go back to, but the Lord has really brought me back to that in ways that I could have never asked or imagined. So I'm able to do something I love. Also at a Cause for Tea, I'm the manager and I'm over our Tea Light program, which is a work rehabilitation program to transition women like me back into the workforce. He's given me a position on the board of directors for House of Pearls, where I serve as the vice chair. Glory to God and Him alone. Where I can help other women who are in the same desperate place that I was. And it's not just me that He's changed. Acts 16:31 says, "Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be saved. You and your house." I now have 5.5 years of sobriety. And And like Melissa said, those 5.5 years, they're not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. People don't trust you overnight. You don't get friends again overnight. God doesn't trust you with these things because, they're sacred. Relationships are meant to be stewarded and stewarded well, and I didn't know how to do that for a long time. But since I've been sober, my sister, who was in her addiction, she's now sober. She just celebrated, gosh, I can't remember, don't quote me on it. And also my mom, who, as I mentioned before, drank my whole life growing up. She now has 4 years sober as well. And she has also decided to make a decision to follow Christ this year. So August 31st is International Overdose Awareness Day. A day where we can come together and remember those that we've lost, and where we can pray for those who are still struggling. But they always say that it's darkest right before the dawn. And the very next day is September 1st. And September is National Recovery Month. So I challenge you this next month, during this month of recovery, to recover out loud and to tell others that there is hope. There's an addict out there that needs to hear, just like we've been saying, that there's no shame in saying that you need help. We're never going to break the stigma if we keep telling people. If they say, I have a problem, and we say, oh, I'm sorry. Like, that's not helping anybody. Like, praise God. Yes, you have a problem. Let's get you the help that you need. Because we know that there's a better solution. We have the solution, guys. Don't gatekeep the solution. We had a parking lot full of resources out there to help people who are struggling. And shame dies when our stories are told. So this next month, let's remember today, Overdose Awareness Day, and let's remember and let's pray for our community. But then let's recover out loud. In the vein of exactly what Hunter said, Genesis 50:20, what you meant for harm, God meant for good, and for the salvation of many. So thank you, Jessica, for not letting my friend's death be in vain, and for using your pain to help others. And I pray that God blesses your ministry. Thank you.
was a great job, Tabitha. I just want to thank all the speakers for coming today and telling your stories. You all did an amazing job. Thank all of you for coming. I think it says a lot about you coming to this event, and I think it's the first steps to making sure that we're working together as one big community. It's truly going to take all of us working together to help each other to solve this problem. So thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I would like for us to make a circle in the church, and we can all hold hands. And Morgan's going to come up and sing. And JT, if you would please close us with prayer after she finishes singing. We're going to pray over those bags that we all wrote our loved one's name, whether you know someone that's currently in addiction or you know someone that's passed away from addiction. We want to all pray for those families that's lost their loved ones, and we want to pray for the healing for the ones that are still suffering. So with that being said, Morgan, and if y'all will all get in a circle around the church, we're going to hold hands.
While blue skies and hillsides feel so far away, I wrote in my notebook that I've seen better days than the ones as of late. I can't bear the weight. The rain won't stop pouring down my window pane. I haven't left my bedroom in 76 days. I wish something would change, 'cause I'm losing faith. So I brought it up in a desperate prayer. Lord, why are you keeping me here? Then he said to me, child, I'm planting seeds. I'm a good God and I have a good plan. Trust that I'm holding the watering can, and someday you'll see that flowers grow in the valley. So whatever the reason, I'm barely getting by. I'll trust it's a season, knowing that you're by my side every step of the way. And I'll be okay, 'cause I brought it up in a desperate prayer. Lord, why are you keeping me here? Then he said to me, child, I'm planting seeds. 'Cause I'm a good God and I have a good plan. Trust that I'm holding a watering can, and someday you'll see that flowers grow in the valley. When I'm on the mountain and looking down below, I see a valley of flowers that needed time to grow. And I thank you for the rain, the hurt in days of pain. And I'll bring it up in a grateful prayer grave.